podcast. I have a guest today, Kenny Saunders. Kenny is the National Recruiting Coordinator for Penn State. What's going on, Kenny?
Going all right, man. They just actually bumped me up, man. I'm DPP now, Director of Player Personnel, doing big things in 2030.
Oh man, man, hey, they throwing that money around up at State College,
A
ain't
little
they?
something. It felt bad for me with the twins coming this year, so I guess I had to do a little something.
Congratulations, man. Glad to see you back over there. So let's start over with your journey starting out in Baltimore. I was just doing some research the other day, and I realized you was over with Ozzie Newsome for a few years. How was that experience?
That experience for me was really the kind of foundation that gave me the confidence and ability to really continue this career for as long as I have. When you work for a guy like Ozzie Newsome, that's a legend in the profession, as a not only as a player, Hall of Fame player, probably going to be a Hall of Fame executive as well. You don't really have to do much as long as you're around guys like that, learning and soaking up all the knowledge from their past experiences and what they have to give to you. That's invaluable experience in itself. For me, I had the pleasure of being there for 6 years with him, and really taught me a lot, not just by him telling me things, but watching how he moved, watching how he evaluated, watching how he controlled the room, watching how he watched film, watching how he watched practice. All those things, he may not have even been intentionally doing it, but I was definitely making sure I paid attention because obviously his name speaks for itself. And not just him, guys like Eric DaCosta, who's currently the GM for Baltimore, Joe Douglas, currently the GM for the New York Jets, was there. Chad Alexander, Andy White, assistant GM for the Steelers. A ton of guys, Ian Cunningham. I could go on and on. Just so many talented people in that building, which was really a who's who and an all-star team of guys to learn from. So I really appreciated that. But coming from the NFL into college, I really felt confident about my ability to evaluate film. I think we did a lot of good things in Baltimore, had a lot of success in the draft, free agency, all of those things. So when I came here, I felt pretty good about what I was looking for and what I was looking at. And then that's only half the battle, maybe not even half at this point, but there's a lot of more elements when it comes to college football recruiting than just evaluating film. It's not a draft. We have to do the legwork of and the hard work of convincing these guys to come here. In a way, we're big salesmen for the university and the football program here at Penn State. So that's another big part of it as well. And I felt pretty good about that. Just I'd always had a love for Penn State. I was born in Philadelphia, lived there till sixth grade before moving down to Maryland. So I grew up a big Penn State fan and wanted to be able to contribute to a university that I didn't go to, but always admired and really had a lot of respect for.
Yeah, man, I totally agree with you about Ozzie, man. Ozzie is probably known as the Bill Parcells general manager. He has a big tree of guys that learned the business under him, and that got promoted out now, and they're doing the same thing. Kind of like what you said. There's always kind of that notion where you never know who's watching you. Right? You was soaking it in, just paying attention, looking to how he was running his day to day, how he was running his business. And I remember it was funny when I came out in 2001. I worked out with those guys quite a bit, and then I forgot who the defensive coordinator was. He came down to up to State College and worked me out in the rain. It was pouring down raining, so I'm thinking we're not gonna work out. So he was like, "Oh no, man, we play in the rain, right?" So we would come out here and work out in the rain. So I worked out with him for a while, and it's funny because with their second pick in that 2001 draft, I was on the phone with him with one of these scouts, and he was like, "Yeah, we love you. We don't know what we're about to do right now. It was between you and another guy, but they end up going with Gary Baxter, who was a bigger corner that could play safety and corner, and that's where they went. But I love my time over there. Those guys just talking football.
Great dudes, man. Yep. Absolutely.
Yeah, definitely. He was with us for a while in State College. You end up leaving, I want to say, what, 2008, 2009?
19. So I got here my first go around. I left the Ravens right after the Super Bowl year. Got here in 2014 when James Franklin come. I didn't come over initially when those guys did. I came over. I want to say like in September or so when they had an opening. Really saw it as an opportunity to make my mark. I always wanted to play at Penn State. That didn't work out. That wasn't going to work out for me, but I saw this as my way to get to that university in a different capacity with my skill set. So I jumped at the opportunity. I got here in 2014 and I had an unbelievable time here as the assistant director of player personnel. Had an opportunity to run my own department at the University of Oregon, and that was a great experience for me. I was there, and we did great things there. But when I had the opportunity to come back to Penn State, that was for me a no brainer. Sometimes you got to understand, like, my first college job experience was Penn State. So, in a lot of ways, I was a little naive to how special this place was. And when I left to go to Oregon, I just assumed it was going to be just like Penn State, another college job. And I'm going to go there. And we did great things, don't get me wrong, but it just wasn't Penn State. And I think leaving might have been one of the best things for me because it gave me even much more of a greater appreciation for what Penn State is, what the fan base is, what the culture is here. So when I got the opportunity to come back, I was anxious and eager to get back to what I call home. And so that's how we ended up here. And been here, got back in 2021. And it's funny, my title has changed a couple times. They brought me in initially as the national recruiting coordinator. So I was doing everybody. Then I got moved to now I'm the now I'm actually the director of player personnel. So it's been a great journey, but I'm very happy not only to be in this role, but to be in this role at Penn State, and it's been awesome to be back.
I tell people all the time, and they probably think I'm biased, but I said it's no place like Penn State, right? We've been to, and I got friends that played at Michigan, Tennessee, and Florida, and different places, but we joke about it all the time. I said it's no place like Penn State. So let's back up a little bit. You know, your first stints there, I'm gonna read some of the recruiting classes that you had. You signed the first 5 consecutive classes ranked in the top 20, including the 2018 class with Micah Parsons, which finished 6th nationally. How was that relationship building those teams, just getting to know the guys?
That was those classes, especially that 18 class. Those were really special classes for me, not because of the ranking, but when you think about the timeline, those are the first classes we really got to see their entire high school careers. Last year with the COVID year, some guys got extra years. So some of those guys from those classes just finished up their careers at Penn State. And that was really emotional because at this point, I've known them almost half their lives. If you talk about when we started recruiting them to the time they graduate from college. So building those relationships were paramount. At the end of the day, we're a great football institution, but we're not what we like to call a football factory. We're going to build our team based on relationships, not a transactional relationships, but a true relationships where the guys care about us and we care about the guys, and we're going to build this thing together. So when you know someone that long and you have those relationships throughout the recruitment process and eventually they come here, they really truly become family. And see them every day. You go through the grind with them. They're grinding out there on the field. We're making sure that they have everything they need to perform at optimal levels, not only in the on the field but also in the classroom. So it's a true relationship and it's not fake. And you build that trust and that confidence over time that we all got each other. And that's the big difference here. So when we signed those classes, that 2018 class that was super highly ranked, I think since sixth in the nation is what you said. That was just like the family coming home, essentially. You talk about guys in that class from Jahan Dotson to Micah to Jesse Luketa was in that class. Those guys are staples and kind of real moments in my life, and it has nothing to do with football, but just moments in my life. And I can tell you individual stories about them and their families and just how we went through this journey, the ups and downs, me leaving, me coming back. That was also special coming back for those guys. And that's been a really great and beautiful thing that I've had to experience. I owe a lot of that to Coach Franklin in Penn State, and we forged those relationships, and those are for life. It's not some of those guys are off the NFL, some of them are off in their careers and leading their lives, but it's always family, and it's always love, and it's always going to be like that with Penn State.
I totally agree because I left there in 2001, and it still feel the same for me when I come up there. When I see my guys that I haven't played with, I don't know anybody, any of the guys on the coaching staff now. I mean, I know them, but they wasn't there. But it's still open arms, like family. They stepped in, and they stepped in a difficult time with a transition with Penn State football, and Coach Franklin and you guys came in and did an awesome job. And now they starting to get us back to where we was at as far as having the elite classes, the top 10 classes every year. And I just want to give you guys a lot of credit because you're doing a great job. So keep up the job.
Appreciate that.
After a year in Oregon, you decided to leave. What we spoke about it briefly, but what about Oregon that made you start looking? Was it COVID? I know it happened during the
Yeah.
COVID time. What?
For me, getting back closer to home was definitely a factor. I'm a Pennsylvania kid, not that I had to be at Penn State, but getting closer to family and closer to home. Only child, so wanting to be around my parents as they got up there a little bit in age. But I always thought it was crazy at the time. I remember when I let Coach Cristobal know that I was going to be stepping away from Oregon, he asked me specifically if I was going back to Penn State, and I told him no, which was true at the time because I wasn't coming back to Penn State. I just knew that I was making a move, and it eventually worked out that I did make it back to Penn State. But at the time when I was leaving, that was not the case. I wanted to get back this way, back to the East Coast, and at least closer to family and pretty much everybody's in my circle. And the fact that I ended up at Penn State is just a blessing because it definitely wasn't. It wasn't on the table when I was leaving. I'm glad it all worked out. I got nothing but positive things to say about the University of Oregon. I don't. It's funny because even those guys aren't there anymore that I was working with. They're down. Most of those guys are spread out or down at Miami. So I'm not too familiar with what the current staff is. Actually, I know one guy because he was our guy here the year before, the special teams coordinator, Coach Lorig. So I'm familiar with him. But other than that, some of the support people. But the University of Oregon's a great place. I think Penn State's different. They got a lot of good stuff going on over there. But I just know that between the two, I would definitely have to choose Penn State if I was in that position. So
Speaking of James, Coach Franklin and the job being available, I read something somewhere, a quote Coach Franklin and Coach Smith. Coach Franklin said when he realized you was on the market, he had to figure out how he can get you back here in State College. Then I also read another article from Terry Smith said he just knows us. I'm gonna read quote Penn State cornerback coach, a defensive coordinator. He's a great communicator. He's a great people skills. He has great connections. He works all over the country. We're excited to have him back here in State College. How does that make you feel when it's coming from your co-defensive coordinator and your head coach that you value?
like anybody, when the guys at the top value what you do, that feels awesome. The good thing about those guys and guys that are still here from the first go around, they know me through and through. When you work with someone long enough, it's not a lot of mysteries or secrets, especially the way we work, the hours we put in. The fact that those guys had confidence in me to the fact where they felt like there was a fit. And like I said, there wasn't really anything available at the time. So in a way, I feel like they made a space for me to a degree. So that's even more. I'm thankful to Coach Franklin and Terry and all the guys that really fought for me to get back here because I definitely, and I don't think they even knew I wanted to be back here, but because I tried to keep it cool, play hard to get a little bit, not seem too desperate, but deep down inside, this is always where I hoped it would go. But at the same time, I didn't want to get my hopes up too much because I knew it wasn't an option on the table at the time. So I'm very thankful for those words. But the thing about Coach T and Coach Franklin is I know they mean it because they trust me with a lot of things in this recruiting department, and they show me. The words are awesome, but the fact that they give me responsibilities and assignments that they can trust me with, that shows me every day.
I agree, totally agree, man. It's playing football. I tell kids all the time. I had a few kids call me on Transferportal day, asking me advice on what they should do. I was like, look, you got to go out there and earn the respect from your coaches. They're not just going to give it to you. So you got to go out there and do everything you're supposed to do on and off the field to build that trust, not only with your coaches, but with your teammates, that you know what you're doing on the other side of the position you playing. So don't be so quick to leave. Sit there and go through the adversity and build and deserve and build a trust. And that'll go a long way. So I definitely agree with you on that one. So how does it feel? I know they brought in another former Penn State safety, Alan Zamitis, to join the staff. How has that been to have a letterman on the staff with you?
Before we address that, let me just you better call AZ a corner because you know he's gonna come for you if you start calling safety.
Hey, he might say he's a safety, but I mean a corner, but he look like a
Hey,
safety.
I ain't
So
going there.
I said, man, you play in the wrong position, man. You supposed to be in
Hey, if
that.
you tell people that look like you might think I played linebacker here at this point, but
Now, I was looking at when I was at the game. I said, "Dad, I probably would have been a
the
linebacker
way the
today."
game going, but it's funny because everybody knows Z from as a player, and some people know him as a coach. He had an unbelievable career at Susquehanna, coordinator there, coaching defense as well. He did a lot of great things there, but and everyone kind of touts a lot of the recruiting success to me being back, which if they understood the job that AZ has done since he's been back at Penn State, I could go home every day and know that this place is in really good hands with the things he's done. He's already recruited as a coach. So the fact that when he stepped in, he just took it by the reins. And we've had always all had great recruiters, but AZ, man, that guy is passionate. He cares about this place. And with him, it's 100% authentic. And when you talk to these kids, if you can portray and you can get across that you mean what you say and you believe it, that goes a long way. And I think that's not anything AZ has to try to do at work. That's who he is, and that's a huge strength of his. And he believes it through and through, man. He walked the walk just like yourself. I tell everybody when you let him come back, you gotta say thanks for having him. Like, what do you mean? I'm renting this house. This is your house. I'm just staying in here for a little bit, but you guys built this foundation. Same thing with him. So for him to be able to be a letterman, not just a letterman, but an All American, a guy that got drafted, a guy whose name is up on the wall in this building, and then for him to be authentic and real, and he'll never tell a recruit any of that stuff. I boast on and brag on him all the time when they come in. So like, cause he'll be like, "Yeah, I played here." I'll be like, "Hold on, dog. Let's rewind that." I was like, "You got drafted, right?" He was like, "Yeah." I was like, "You was All American." I was like, "Yeah." I was like, "You got like a billion picks in here. You took one back to the crib against Ohio State, didn't you?" He's like, "Yeah." So he's modest with it, but I'm gonna make sure everybody understand who they talking to when they come to Penn State. But
I
but
totally agree.
he has been honestly, in my opinion, even a bigger addition than myself coming back here because there's things that he can say and do and have conversations that I could never have because I didn't live it. In my opinion, him being here has that's the reason. That's a major reason for our success in recruiting, and I don't think that's talked about enough.
I agree. Anytime you can speak from experiences and you've been there and that's your alma mater, it is coming straight from the heart. So it ain't like you got to practice it, and the kid's gonna believe it more when it's coming from him. I totally agree. Yet with your new title, how many people are in the recruiting department right now?
So there's the recruiting department, which consists of myself. We have a general manager. We have two on-campus people. We have a creative director. We have a communications director. So that's six right there. And then with also in the recruit department, we have basically the personnel staff, which is myself. So I already counted myself. But then we also have Az, Slim, Rashad LB, Rashad Rich, Khalil Ahmad, and DJ Bryant. So I ran out of fingers. So I think we got 11. And I gotta be clear. So there's the recruiting department, and then there's the kennel, and we call ourselves the personnel department, the kennel. And again, that's Az, myself, Slim, Rashad Rich, Rashad LB, DJ Bryant, and Khalil Ahmad, and we do the majority of the actual recruitment, talking to kids, and the film evaluations, and all of those aspects. And we call ourselves the kennel because we feel like we're responsible for bringing the dogs in. So we're trying to bring the dogs into Penn State, and I feel like that's what we're doing a good job of. If you ever hear the kennel reference, that's what they're talking about. That arm of the recruiting wing that we take a lot of pride in and really feel good about what we're doing these days.
Good. You guys doing a great job. So tell me, how does a kid come up on your radar? How does it work? So you hear about a kid or you get stats, and how do you guys sit down as a team, look at film on someone before you decide, okay, let's look at this, let's take a harder and better look at these kids, this particular
So one
kid.
of the good things about living in this era is there's really no more hidden gems with technology and the internet and being able to basically contact anybody you want and reach out and touch them. You're going to hear about a guy if he's having a good season or making accolades and all those things. So there's a number of ways we find out about kids. The traditional way, coaches go out on the road and they visit into high school. So they come back and they talk to these coaches and they may tell them, hey, I got this young guy. He might not be for Penn State right now, but he's got a chance. So we'll start tracking and evaluating that kid early on. We also, people call us. I know some people think those emails don't get seen or those Twitter DMs don't get seen, but at least at Penn State, I can tell you that a lot of times we will make sure we vet all those avenues of communication to make sure we're at least getting eyes on somebody. We have a really good intern program within the kennel where we are going through the entire country, seeing what's out there, but also we also do a really good job of tracking guys that are getting offers. So it could be a random kid in Alaska that picks up a Hawaii offer, and we're going to find out about it because all of that's public information once they put it out on Twitter. So we'll see that, and we'll wait pretty much anybody in the country that someone deemed valuable enough to extend a scholarship offer to. So we'll make sure that we watch all those guys as well. And each one of us has like I kind of think of it as having our own positions of what we're responsible for. So we're making sure every position everywhere in the country is covered. So there are no hidden gems anymore for Penn State. But inevitably, this time in a young man's life is always going to make some things happen. So there could be a kid that was 5'9" this year and he grows to 6'2" over the summer. So there's going to be things that pop up, but we try to make sure we're on top of all those things, getting the information as best we can to make sure we're evaluating everyone possible in the country we think can play for Penn State.
Good. I totally agree, man. There's no hidden gems anymore. Back in the day, it was a little difficult, right? Without the technology that we have today, it was easy for a kid to go and throw his highlights on Huddle or on social media, get in, slide into your DM. Is that safe to say? Slide into your coach DM, sending highlights and stuff. There's no excuse today for kids to be able not to be seen. And it was a little difficult back in the day. We both seen players back in our day, or even later or earlier than that, that never got a chance to be actually seen, or blame it on their coaching staff that the coaches didn't get the film out to enough college coaches. So it's definitely no excuse
I
today.
didn't mention, but also obviously camps. We hold about 6 camps a summer, so somebody's gonna come up there that we didn't know about and gonna show out, and that's gonna be a guy we're gonna actively get on. But then you have all these national camps from the Rivals camp and Under Armour camps. There's gonna be guys that show up, and people are gonna start taking
Right,
notice of. So
right. That's one of the big things that I recommend when people call and ask me about their kids. Send them to a camp. Where you located? All right. What's the 2 or 3 major schools that's close to you? Send them to that school. There's nothing like being able to, the coaching staff being able to see them hands on, and they can see them in person, right? Everybody always fluffing height and statistics. So when they can get them in hand and see them in person, that's a whole nother ball game. So start there. Send them, find 2 or 3 summer camps and send them to the summer camps.
that's when you can get an in-person evaluation on a kid, and you trust your numbers, your measurements. That is, in a lot of ways, that's, I would say, equal, if not sometimes better than having a really good highlight tape on Huddle.
Totally agree. So let's talk about the program. Now, you guys are going in the right direction. How important is it to continue to build year in and year out to where we consistently back in the top 5, 6, competing against Ohio State, Michigan in the conference, and then having those games out of conference to, if it's an Auburn or LSU or Virginia Tech, whoever, right? What does that look like over the next 5, 10 years?
We got to continue to stack classes. We've done a really good job, in my opinion, since we've been back, putting together 2 really good classes. But if we want to stay consistent, we know that we got to not only win in the high school recruitment, also be good in the portal. And one thing that enough people aren't talking about is, with the portal, you got to recruit your own team to a degree to make sure that those guys aren't leaving. We have a lot of good talent right now, we feel like, on this roster, but every year some go, some more come in. So replacing good talent with good talent, developing that talent that you have. No high school kid is a finished product. So once they get on campus, making sure that we're recruiting the right kids that want to work hard in the weight room, be very coachable, being eligible academically, take school seriously. All those things factor in with the kind of guys we're going to recruit. But at the end of the day, really good fits for this program and this university. So it all comes together into one piece of a puzzle that has to fit into what makes sense for Penn State and James Franklin's program. So what we plan on doing is being aggressive and continuously building on top of the 22 and 23 classes. We're off to a good start right now, I think, in the 24 and already 25 class. So we're just going to keep on bringing in high quality individuals that make us better on the football field, that want to get developed, earn a degree, and also play in the NFL. All those things come together.
That was my next question. As far as the type of young man you're looking to bring to State College, I tell people all the time, it's more than just being able to play football. What type of character you have, and what type of student you are. So I think people don't talk about that enough. So these kids can understand it's just not about you being able to go out on the field and play football. So elaborate on that a little bit more for me.
Yeah, there's so many things. It's I was just talking to an NFL scout not too long ago about just like what does it take to make it. Like I don't care who you are. Like you could be the best football player in the world. There's still a little bit of luck involved in that, but also the preparation and everything. I was talking to a kid a couple of years ago, and I asked him if football was important to him, and he said, "Yeah," but this was a kid that was not doing very well academically, and not because he wasn't a smart kid. He just wasn't taking it seriously. And I said, "You do understand that you need this piece to be able to play football. So if you consider football being important, then school is also important because school is the gateway to get you onto the football field. So you can't just say football is important and blow off school. They all go hand in hand. So understanding that talent is not good enough, especially at a place like Penn State. Coach Franklin's big thing is he says he hates average. If you want to be an average person in anything, this probably isn't the place for you. So we demand a lot of our kids here at Penn State, but we also recruit the type of kids where we think we can get that out of them. We want them to be, we'd love for them all to be 4.0 students graduating in 3 years. We know that's not realistic, but at the end of the day, we want a kid to apply themselves, not just on the football field. That's not good enough. They got to be to their best ability as good as they can be in the classroom. They got to be great citizens in the community. They got to do all of those things to make it work. People always talk about Micah Parsons, the great football player. They don't realize Micah Parsons walked away with the degree from Penn State in 3 years. That's important. So all of those things have to come together in this union that we call a Penn State football player here. But we recruit the type of kids by doing our research, looking into their background, talking to their communities, talking to their coaches, their families, and we try to get the fits that we think make sense for us. And all of those things factor into when we actually do extend scholarship offers and take commitments. So it's all important.
Definitely, man. And I commend you guys on that. And when being around Coach Paterno and that staff, that was his thing as well. He didn't care how good you was on that field. If you didn't go to class and you didn't do the things you were supposed to do off the field, you wasn't gonna play. I remember Peyton, Jared Payton, coming on his visit, and Walter Payton's son, and his mom was just drilling Coach on school, and he was just laughing, just talk about it. He was like, "Look, I don't care who your dad is, who your mom is. If you don't do it my way, you won't play." And that goes a long way. And it's funny. Speaking of the graduation rate, I think Penn State athletics. I was reading yesterday have a 92% graduation rate when it comes to athletics, but the football team have a 88%
Right.
graduation rate. So definitely,
Which is, it's when you start to look at some of the other programs, it's a shame that we don't really look at that more. But the fact that some schools are 50% and below, that's a problem. 88% is great, but if you ask Coach Franklin, it's still not high enough. But we really do take a lot of pride in that. And it's funny, a kid was on a visit this last weekend, and the mom said to me, "We've been to three other places. This is the first place that really talked about academics." I don't know how that's possible. In this day and age, I know there's a lot of other things going on surrounding college football, but at the end of the day, they're still coming to college for an education. The reality is, most guys are not making it to the NFL. What is your program putting in place to make sure that they're set and prepared for life once football comes to an end, whether they go to the NFL or not? I tell these kids, you could play 10 years in the NFL. You're still going to be under 40. You're going to be well under 40 when that's over. So, what is the next step? What have you done to this point from when your career comes, and everyone's career comes to an end. Tom Brady today, maybe we'll see.
We'll see in about
Right,
4 months,
but
right?
eventually it's going to end for him too, if it didn't already.
Right,
What's the next step? If you have nothing that prepared you for something after that, if your whole identity is wrapped up in being a football player and you have no skills, no aspirations, no dreams past that, then what is your plan for after that? You're in a ways you're lost. So our goal is to get these guys ready academically, athletically, socially, like I always say, but also make sure that they're prepared for the next phase because the NFL is a business. Like they're not concerned about any of that. So we got to make sure that guys have
right,
those things in place because once the NFL is over, it's over. I haven't seen too many
right,
people that are able to walk away for a couple of years and make it back. I can't name any to the league, at least the NFL league. So making sure that these guys have all the tools, have that piece of paper in hand when they leave, and if they don't, hound the mess out of them until they get that thing done, like Saquon just did last year. Those things are vital and important to make sure that our young men that walk these halls aren't going to be talked about as guys that just faded off into obscurity and ended up somewhere they weren't supposed to be. They're prepared for that life after football phase, which is very extremely important for everyone, whether you play in the NFL or not.
right, man. And that's why I feel like for you guys, Coach Franklin and his staff was probably the perfect candidates to take over for Coach Paterno because this was like hearing a Coach Paterno speech. He always said, "Look to your left, look to your right. Only 4% of you guys are gonna make it to the NFL. My job is not to prepare you for the NFL. My job is to prepare you for life after football and be a productive student, be a productive human in society, being successful at whatever business you decide to do once you leave here." And I think people don't, that's not talked about enough. And especially now with all the other stuff going on in college football, college athletics in
Right.
general. So I think you guys are doing a great job. Keep doing a great job. Looking to see that 88% go up
We
some
need
more.
to.
So definitely. So you hit on it a little bit, portal. How are we looking at the transfer portal? I know some guys, some universities are just loading up on the transfer portal and just trying to grab as many guys as they can. How are we looking at the transfer
That's
portal?
definitely not us. We look at the transfer portal in a couple of ways. Number one, we look at it as a place that we can fill some gaps as far as where we think we need to supplement our roster. Also, along with that, we have people leave. That means we potentially either need to bring in a high school kid or a transfer portal guy that's already in college. So it's funny because we've never wanted to build our roster off the transfer portal. We do too good of a job recruiting high school prospects, developing them, and making sure they have successful careers coming to Penn State. So because we do such a good job there, we don't feel like we need to mass overhaul our roster. But if there's a really good player that fits our culture and we think can help us and doesn't upset the culture in the locker room, then we'll dive into that. But again, it's like what we keep talking about. It can't just be about the talent. It's got to be a fit. There's been extremely talented players that have entered the transfer portal that we have no interest in based off of all the things that we know about that prospect. And we wish them luck, and I'm sure that they'll do great things wherever they go. It just won't be at Penn State because the way we've built this team, the way our culture is, we have a really good thing going. And that's fragile and that's rare. So when you actually have it, you got to make sure our players are involved in the process to a degree. When they come up on when these guys are in the transfer portal, they just like a high school prospect, they come on a visit, and we get feedback from our guys. What do they think? Do they see them as a fit? Do they think they they have the capacity to put on the white helmet with the blue stripe down the middle? Not everybody gets that honor and that and earns that respect. So if our guys sign off on them, that's a big part of the evaluation as well. We've identified guys once they enter the transfer portal. Like I said, with the kennel, we have our positions. We'll evaluate those guys by position. We have one person that kind of oversees the whole transfer portal, that's in charge of it. Rashad Rich is taking the helm on that right now, and he's making sure that he's filtering all the players that he thinks have the ability and all that to not just the kennel but also the position coaches. And then if we see a guy that makes sense, it goes up the ladder. I'll get to watch it. Coordinators get to watch it. Eventually, it gets to Coach Franklin, and then we decide. We look at everything. We start doing our homework. We talk to their coaches. We talk to strength coaches at the former school. We go back to the high school coach. We really do our due diligence on making sure that we know as much information that we can about the prospect because we're bringing someone into our family. If we're deciding to bring someone into our family, we better know what we're getting. So when we do all those things, if everything checks out and we feel like they can help us and it's not going to be a distraction or affect the locker room or the position room, then we start recruiting the kid. And if we land them, they end up here. And we've seen a couple of those instances this year. But again, it's not going to be a mass overhaul. We have too many good players already in the program that we don't need to do that. There's
And I
yeah, there's
think,
just an element of football that, and I believe this is just me, my feelings. It's not like other sports. You gotta trust and believe in the other 10 guys out there with you, whether you're on offense or defense. And that's hard to do if you look around and you don't know your teammates. So you can bring in one, you can bring
right.
in a couple, and you can acclimate them into your culture. But if everyone is on their own separate page, that's just really hard to do, in my opinion.
And I think a lot of guys are looking at it. It's almost like free agency in the NFL. And there's a lot of issues that I believe are going to come from that. When we was just talking about graduation rates, and you got guys that's transferring every other year because they're looking for a spot. I think they're gonna get left behind when they start looking at graduation credits and being able to graduate on time 4 or 5 years. Now it's taking much longer because you didn't transfer to 3 different schools and you don't have the credits to graduate.
Absolutely. That's one thing that no one ever talks about. But what people don't realize is that once you go from one school to the next, not all of those credits come with you. And that is problematic. You see some, like you said, you see some guys. I've seen a kid that's transferred literally every year. In the last, I think he's on his fourth school now. I don't understand. Like sometimes I think people have forgotten what the point of all this is. It's an opportunity to get an education, and then if you have the opportunity to play in the NFL, jump at that. But the first thing is student athlete, not athlete student. But we've sometimes I think people forget that, and it's a shame because if those kids don't graduate, who's on the hook for that at that point? Once all of his athletic eligibility has been exhausted, who's going to be the person that's going to make sure that kid gets his degree? And I don't, and I would like to say I hope someone would, but I don't know if I trust that because there's no way you can advise a kid to be transferring 4 times or 3 times, whatever it may be. And then at the end, who's going to be there once that kid doesn't have anything to provide for you?
And I kind of look at it, the guidance. I think as far as when the whole talks came about with changing the rules in the transfer portal, I think it was a good idea because we know coaching staffs get up and leave and then the kids stuck. But that's not really the case on most of these transfers. So I think it should have been better thought about before they just change everything. Because you shouldn't, if I'm in the Big Ten, I'm playing for Penn State, and I'm upset I'm not playing enough, I shouldn't be able to go to transfer to Michigan and play the same year. It should be you got to sit out. So now that's going to make me think have a second thought before I just get up and say I want to leave. And I think that's the part that's missing. And everybody talk about the coaches can leave anytime they want to, so the kids should be able to leave. And I agree to that to a certain point. But when we look at it, that's not the case most of the time. We know, I've been that kid as a freshman, thinking I was supposed to be playing more than I was playing and getting mad because damn, I'm a transfer. And I went through that at Penn State. I think it was the third game, and I played, but not enough. And I called my mom and told her I was going to transfer. She's like, "No, you're not. You're not. You just got there. Give it time. You play it. You playing. You're not playing as much as you want to play, but you playing. So give it time."
It's just the life lesson of overcoming adversity and sticking something out is out the window at this point, which is a shame because some of these kids are going to go into the real world. There ain't no transfer portal in the real world. You got to deal with the issues and get through it. And sometimes it ain't going to be fun or exciting. And you didn't learn that lesson by going through. I look at Carl Nassib, it's the perfect example. Didn't start a single game till his fifth year at Penn State. Ends up being a first team All American, led the nation in sacks with 15 and a half, and was defensive player of the year in the conference.
Right.
Another, like, nowadays, and I'm not saying him personally, but somebody else would have left, and then we don't have that story. It's just the way it's set up right now. It's not beneficial to have this. And on top of that, he was a walk on. So it's just the path of least resistance is very available, a lot more than it was before. And I do think there are a lot of positives to the transfer portal, but it's just one of those things. Where's the line? Like, where do you put the line? And like you said, I don't know if it's being used for what it was initially intended for, the reasoning behind it. So I would love to see how you fix that. I don't have an answer, but I just know that we're losing some life lessons that I think will benefit people in the long run once they get into the real world and there isn't a path of least resistance. You got to face it. You got to deal with it. You got to overcome. You got to battle through and figure it out. Because a lot of times, the people, I value people that have to make things work that don't have options because if they can figure that out, then everything else comes easy.
But it's kind of like figuring it out now on someone else's dime while you're still in
Part of the
college,
lesson.
as opposed to being in the
Hey,
real
that's a
world.
part of college. We're supposed to be teaching. It's another lesson
Right,
in
right.
college.
So you got to learn on somebody else's dime while you out in the real world. You in college, you have no bills. It's free. You eating for free. Like when you get out in the real world and you got to pay for all this stuff now, it's going to be a lot harder than what it would have been in college. And one of the others talking about the transfer portal, one of the questions that I get asked a lot of people feel like it's taking scholarships away from high school kids.
I could see that. I can see why people think that, and I don't know if they're wrong. I don't feel that way. I just feel like we're so used to the old model that the transfer portal has upset that a little bit. Not in the sense of taking scholarships away, but I think it's delayed. To a sense, what I mean by that is in the time where a lot of schools would have been really focused on finish up their 23 class and getting those, like we just got one more signing today. I think a lot, and we were in it too. A lot of guys were really focused on evaluating the transfer portal kids, so they weren't as focused on those seniors that were still looking for home. Now, I don't think. I think once the dust settles, those kids are still going to have homes, and I think they're still going to be able to find scholarships and commit or whatever they need to do. I just think it's going to be a little delayed because now, since we had that whole essentially month of December to attack the transfer portal, that would have been the time where you were really spending it on those seniors, and it wasn't this year. At least for us, it wasn't as much as it has been in the past. But again, this was the first year that we had those windows for transfer portal. So you feel like since you're in the window, you got to do this because once the window closes, now you can't do that. But whether the window's open or closed, you can always kind of attack those high school prospects. So I don't think it's taken away opportunities. I just think the calendar and the timeline on it has changed, and we're just not used to it yet. I think if we stay at this model, I think in 3 4 years when it becomes more normalized, it won't be as dramatic. This was just the first year, so it feels different. But I don't think it'll. I think in a couple years, if we keep with this model, it'll just be the new norm, and we just know, hey, I didn't sign in the early signing period, so I guess I gotta wait till a while now, and we'll see how that goes. But there'll be some adjustment. I just,
Right, just
yeah, it's
change.
just change, and it's always hard, especially when it's the first time, and no one has the answers. We're all trying to figure it out together, but we definitely will. But I think by the end of this year, we won't be looking at it as these kids lost out on opportunities. I just think it's going to be delayed.
And that's kinda how I was seeing it too, as opposed to, I guess, the whole month of December is the transfer portal,
Yeah.
right? But it just delayed until January, and they just kind of on a holding, waiting around to see if Penn State or Ohio State or whoever gonna pick up someone in the transfer portal, and they just got the kid on hold until they figure out what they're gonna do with the transfer portal.
So that's definitely some of the case because when you get down after the first signing period, you're talking about numbers at that point. Hey, I have a spot, or not only that, but you're saying who you're losing from your team because now I might really like a prospect and I can't take them because I have that scholarship locked up in XYZ player. But now XYZ player leaves and enters the transfer. Hey, now come on down because I have a scholarship available for you. So there's some positive and some negative with it. But I think at the end of the day, it all evens out, to be honest.
It's just changed, like you said. We so used to the old way
So used.
that everybody just trying to get used to it. We getting used to the new normal, as I say, with COVID and everything else that's happening now. So we got a lot of new normals right
Yeah.
now. Speaking of NILs, how are you guys utilizing the NIL?
We are we're doing some really creative things with NIL. Our guys, we benefit from being at a place like Penn State that has the largest dues paying alumni network in the entire world. Tapping into resources with that and making sure that our guys have every opportunity possible to make as much money as they can while being at Penn State. But one thing I will say about the way we're approaching NIL, at the end of the day, we're not going to use NIL to get a kid. And what I say by that is NIL can't be the reason why a kid comes to Penn State. It can be a factor, but it can never be the reason. And what I mean by that is you you still have to pick Penn State. We at least I believe and we believe because the money from NIL that is that's not a strong enough hold because if that's all it took to get you to Penn State, then someone can easily come out the next year and pull you out of Penn State. We still want kids to come here because number one, they love Penn State. They want to play for Coach Franklin, their position coach. They want to get a really good education. And they want to have an opportunity to get a degree and play in the NFL as long as they want to. But you're also going to have a great opportunity to make a lot of money in IL if you work at it, if that's something that you want to be a part of your life. So NIL has definitely been a factor in this recruitment process, much more than even I thought it could have been. But I will say this the way we're handling it, you ask our team, you ask our guys, they have opportunities to do an NIL in the season on their off days, but we focus on football every other day during the season. The off season, they can heavy load up on NIL opportunities. but it's always going to be about education and football for us. NIL is going to be a component of being at Penn State, but it can never be the thing. And because we approach it like that, I think we really, I don't want to say it narrows down some kids for us, but if those are the things that are going to attract you, then it might not be the best fit at Penn State for you. So we want kids that want to play in championships. We want kids that wanted to get a degree. We want kids that want to be on the dean's list and honor roll and all those things. And we want kids that excel at NIL too, but it has to be with all those other things. It can't be NIL and I'll think about the rest of the reasons why I'm coming there. It's got to be for the same reasons kids have always been choosing music. Because what people don't realize that haven't done this, and it's hard to be a college football player at this level. I love the people that say, "Oh man, they're going to school for free." Trust me, they ain't. They are working for this thing. These guys go to classes early in the morning and they're up late at night in study hall. And in between then, they're busting their behinds, whether it be in the weight room or on the football field, in the meeting room. So it's hard to do this. And if the only hold that someone has over you is a couple of dollars through NIL, that's just not enough. It's got to
Right.
be, you got to pick Penn State for the right reasons, for all the reasons we've talked about on here. And it's got to make sense to not just you, but your family and your community. And you got to trust and believe in us that we have your best interest and we care about you as more than a football player. So the NIL component has been it's been a cute little wrinkle we've been working with, and it's been interesting. And we've had some great things going on with NIL opportunities for our guys. They're all over doing amazing things. And I tell you what, one of the best things, and I'll put it out there, but Drew Alar, he did a children's book and he signed a couple of them, and all of the proceeds from that he donated to a charity back in his hometown. So those are some of the things from NIL that have been probably underreported, like that our guys are doing, because they couldn't make money to give money before because of the rules, but now they're able to fund foundations. Shoot, our starting quarterback started his own NIL company, and you talk about if someone wants to go into business. Hey, I'm already a CEO. I'm 22 years old. Having that more experience, being able to learn how to run your own business, or I actually got to pay taxes. I got to learn about how to do that. And you're getting real world experience. Some of that has been really good for our guys to be participating in as well. So the NIL aspect it's been interesting. And I think we're still in the infancy of it for the whole country. And it'll be it's curious to see how it's going to look in a couple of years. But I think we're doing just as good a job as anybody for getting our guys opportunities, and they're really loving the opportunities that we're giving them and taking advantage of it. I mean, it's been cool to watch these guys. And the other thing I'll say about it is building relationships for that life after football. They're rubbing they're rubbing shoulders with some really important people that I really believe is going to lead to careers after football once they're said and done.
I agree, man. And it seems like you guys are doing a good job on how you're running it. Oh, in-state college, I know it's different from state to state with the different
Right.
rules. And I talked to Dan Cabala over the summertime briefly about some of the stuff. So it's good to see what you guys are doing. Not surprised. We always set the standard. So definitely excited and happy for you guys. I'm gonna leave you on this. Next year, with some of the talent that we have coming back, when you talk about a Drew, you're talking about Nicholas Singleton, Katron Allen, and you're talking about Abdul Carter on the defensive side of the ball. We have some young talent. It's good to see the guys put it together and be able to compete in the top 10 and possibly for a national championship in the next year or two. With all the talent we have, how fast do you think we could gel together to be we fighting to get in that top 4 teams to play in the national championship?
Yeah, I think we're right on the cusp of it. Like everything else, I had the opportunity to be a part of a team that won a Super Bowl, and it's hard to get to that top of the mountain at any level, especially in this sport. Things have to work out. There's an element of luck, injury prevention, all
Mhm.
of those things have to work out. But I will say this, with the way that we've recruited, with the coaching staff that we have, with all of the factors, with Coach Franklin as our head coach, there's no reason to not think we can get this done. These guys, whether they're the young guys, whether they're the guys that have been in the program for a while, they're hungry. They're ready. Our strength staff is as good as anyone. Chuck Wilson and his guys, he got those guys primed and ready to go. Dr. Nelly, our sports performance guy, everyone is aligned in the right direction, including our team, from everyone down to the ladies at training table. We really believe that, and I think there's a lot of people that talk about it, but when you actually believe it, you got a chance. And with the talent that we have and the talent that we're bringing in this next class to support that, and with the older guys and the guys we brought in the transfer portal, everything is pointing in the right direction. No, first things first, we're going to take care of West Virginia. That's the first game on the schedule, and then we'll keep rolling from there. But I really don't think this team has any limits right now. It's got to work out. We got to stay healthy, and we got to make sure that I do my job and the kennel does their job and the recruiting does their job and continues to support the foundation of this team. And then we'll add a couple guys here and there in the transfer portal. But I'm really excited about the future of Penn State football. And I'm so thankful that I'm back here because I get to do it for a place that I really care about and with a bunch of people that I really care about. So I don't really see any limits to what we're able to do. We got to work at it though, and it starts on Tuesday with our first winter workout. And as long as we continue to recruit at this level and get the right guys that have the right mindset that want to be great, then we're going to be right where we need to be. And I feel even better about that. So I think we're in a good spot, and I'm excited to start with West Virginia and get that season kicked off. It seems like it's a million miles away, but I know it's going to be here in a minute.
Definitely be here quick, fast, in a minute. Tell me how the last thing, how important James Franklin is to the staff and as a leader. As a leader,
Yeah, man, it's funny because in James, but like James is like it's weird because James is like a regular guy. He's the head coach at Penn State football, but I can go to him and shoot the breeze with him, talk to him about anything. He's a friend. He's a friend of mine, and we care about each other. Like he cares. I know he cares about my family. Like he cares about me. Like he showed up at my surprise birthday party last year. What head coach does that? He is everything to this program because the way I feel about him is the way that most everyone in this program feels about him because he has a genuine care for the people that he works with, and the people that he works with has a genuine care for him too. So we're down for to do whatever he needs because we know he'd have our backs the same way. And that's why he's the most important piece to this because when you have a leader and a boss that you know would go through the fire for you, man, you'll do anything for that guy or that woman. And that's the secret sauce to Penn State. It's not fake. It's not BS. It's not what you do on ESPN. It's the fact that if it's 4 o'clock in the morning and I need something, I can call James Franklin, whatever it is, and he'll answer. and talk to me or come to me or whatever it is. And he do that for our players. He do that for our staff. So when you have that kind of leadership, someone that you know you can count on, you can get the he's going to get the best out of me every day, because that's it's not that he demands it. I want to give him that because I know he would give me that, and that's how our players feel, and that's how our staff feels. So him, how important is he? He's everything to this program. He embodies what we're trying to do. It's his vision. We're all aligned in the same direction, and we want this championship for ourselves. We also want it for him. We want him to be the first African American coach to win a national championship. We want that for him too. We want to be a part of that history. So he's extremely important.